Welcome to the Coding Loft. My name is Samuel and today you will learn how to get query parameters from the URL, which is a very common operation, and you will write two reusable functions that will help you get query parameter. First of all, what are query parameter? When you look at a URL, the query parameters are behind the question mark. So they allow you to pass additional information to a URL, such as campaign tracking or information about products. Query parameters always are key value pairs that start with the key, right here in our case channel, then you have the equal sign and behind it you have the value, which in our case is the coding loft. Here's another example, action equals subscribe, so action is the key, subscribe is the parameter. And you can chain different parameters by using the ampersand. So in our example, we have three different parameters. One is channel, the other one is action, and the last one is topics. Now, in order to get those parameters, we create a new variable, which we call params. And what we do now is we create a new URL object. And then we pass in our URL, which is this URL up here. And this object has a property called search params. So if now we console.log params, you can see that it returns this object right here. And it has all of these different methods that you can use to then work with the parameters. So the object params doesn't really return the parameters itself, but it allows you different ways that you can work with these parameters. So in order to find one specific value, we want to use this get method right here. So all we have to do is we say params.get and then we specify the parameter that we want to display. So if I save, you can now see that channel right here has the value, the coding loft. So how can we use this to make a reusable function? So you don't have to type all of this all the time. We define a new function, which we call get query params. And we move this first line in here. And now this URL right here, we want to pass it dynamically as a parameter. So we want to specify the URL that we want to work with, as well as the parameter that we want to get. And that means in the end, we want to return a value. We want to return params.get and then the parameter that we specify here. Let's comment this out. Now let's save this in a variable called query parameters and we call the get query params function. And we need to pass in two parameters. So one is the URL up here and then we want to get the parameter channel. And now we can console.log our query parameter and you can see that we get the coding loft now. But what is the case if we specify a parameter here that isn't valid up there? So let's say test. Well, it returns null, which is not what we want. We might want to give back to the user a statement that tells him that this parameter is not found. So all we do in this return statement, we make a simple check. So we say if params.getParam exists, then that's exactly what we want to return. If it's not the case, if it's null or undefined, then we want to return a string which says this parameter is not defined. So you can see that when we call this query parameter and we log it, we can now see this parameter is not defined. If I change this to topics, now you can see that we get this JavaScript query parameter. To make this function name clearer, you might want to just say get query param, so it makes sure that we just return always one parameter. And now, in order to get several params, we create a new function which is called get all query params. And in this case, what we want is we don't just want one, but we want to have an object returned that gets us all of the different parameters. So again, we will need to pass in a URL. And then we do the same thing to get the query parameters. So we say const params equals new, and then we call the URL object. We pass in the URL as the parameter. And we say .search params to get this property. And then we create a new object that we want to return at the end. So I will call this params object. And in the beginning, this is an empty object. And last but not least, we want to return params object. Now if we call this function right here and we say get query params, so this would get all query params. And now we don't need to specify a single value anymore. And we can console.log it, query params. You can now see it returns us this empty object right here. That's what we want to fill with the query parameters. If we look back at the params object that we have right here, so one of those we can use to loop through this object, and it's this for each method right here. So up here, what we want to do is we want to say params.forEach, and then we run a callback function. In here we can specify two things. One is the value, the other one is the key. And now we can use this to fill our params object. So we say into our params object, we want to have a new key, which is similar to the key that we are looping through right now. And the value is then the value of the current iteration. And then of course we want to return our params object. And now you can see that we have this object right here that has channel, action and topics inside. So now when you want to get query parameters in your next project, all you have to do is copy these functions and then call them to get a parameter and work with it. As always, you will find the code in the description. Now don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Thanks for watching and hope to see you next time.